The ballroom fell into absolute silence. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Every champagne glass froze halfway to lips that had been laughing just moments before. 200 of the city's wealthiest and most powerful people stood completely still, their eyes fixed on a single figure seated at the grand piano in the corner of the room. Grace Williams sat at the Steinway, her worn hands resting on keys worth more than she earned in a year. Her simple navy dress from the thrift store stood in stark contrast to the designer gowns surrounding her. But nobody was looking at her dress anymore. Nobody was laughing. Victor Ashford, the millionaire who had invited her here as a joke, stood frozen near the podium. His face had gone pale. His mouth hung slightly open. The cruel smile he'd worn just minutes earlier had vanished completely. How had a janitor, a woman who spent her days scrubbing floors and emptying trash bins, managed to silence an entire room of people who had just been mocking her? What had just happened? And how did we get here? To understand, we have to go back 3 weeks to a morning that started like any other morning in Grace Williams' invisible life. Grace Williams woke up at 4 in the morning, just like she had every single day for the past 17 years. Her alarm clock's harsh buzz cut through the darkness of her small bedroom in the modest apartment she shared with her daughter. She silenced it quickly, not wanting to wake Naomi, who had stayed up late studying for her college exams. The floor was cold beneath her feet as she made her way to the bathroom. At 52 years old, Grace could feel every one of those early mornings in her joints, in the persistent ache in her lower back, in the calluses on her hands that never quite healed. But she moved through her morning routine with practiced efficiency. Shower, coffee, the navy blue custodial uniform that had been washed so many times it had faded to an almost gray color. By 5:15, Grace was on the bus heading downtown. She watched the city wake up through the smudged window, seeing other early risers heading to their own jobs. Construction workers, bakers, nurses ending their night shifts. The invisible workforce that kept the city running while most people slept. At 6 o'clock sharp, Grace entered Ashford Plaza through the service entrance at the back of the building. The gleaming 50-story tower of steel and glass was one of the most prestigious addresses in the city. The lobby alone was larger than Grace's entire apartment, with marble floors imported from Italy, a waterfall feature that cost more than most people's houses, and a crystal chandelier that required a specialized team just to clean it. Grace had been cleaning Ashford Plaza for 17 years. She knew every floor, every office, every hidden corner. She knew which executives left coffee rings on their mahogany desks, which administrative assistants kept candy in their desk drawers, which conference rooms needed extra attention because of all-night meetings. She worked quietly, efficiently, invisibly. That was the thing about being a janitor. People looked right through you. Grace would be emptying a trash bin while executives discussed million-dollar deals 3 feet away, never once acknowledging her presence. She would vacuum around people's feet while they stayed glued to their phones, never moving, never saying, "Excuse me." To them, she was part of the furniture, part of the building itself. Not quite human. Grace had learned not to mind. She had learned to find a strange kind of peace in that invisibility. It meant no one asked questions. No one wondered about her story. No one saw the life she had left behind. Because Grace Williams hadn't always been invisible. Once, a very long time ago, she had been anything but. Her small apartment held a secret. In the corner of the living room, covered with a sheet to protect it from dust, sat an old upright piano. It was the only thing Grace had kept from her previous life. The only reminder of who she used to be before she became the woman who scrubbed other people's floors. 25 years ago, Grace had been a rising star. At 22, she had been a scholarship student at Juilliard, one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. Her professors had called her a prodigy. Her technique was flawless. Her emotional depth was remarkable. She could make a piano sing, cry, laugh, rage. At 23, she had performed at Carnegie Hall. Critics had written glowing reviews. Her future had stretched before her like an endless road of possibility. And then she had met David Williams. David had been a struggling artist painting portraits in Washington Square Park to make rent. Grace had walked by one Saturday afternoon and stopped to watch him work. He had looked up, smiled, and asked if she would sit for him. That smile had changed everything. They had married within a year. It was the kind of love that felt like coming home, like finding the other half of yourself you didn't know was missing. David supported Grace's music. He came to every performance, sat in the front row, beamed with pride. Grace would play, and afterward they would walk through the city holding hands, talking about their dreams. His paintings would hang in galleries. Her recordings would fill concert halls. Together they would make something beautiful. And then, when Grace was 28, and on the verge of signing with a major recording label, David had gotten sick. It started with fatigue, then pain, then the diagnosis that shattered their world into pieces. Stage 4 cancer, aggressive, advanced. The doctors gave him 2 years, maybe 3 with treatment. Grace had made her choice in an instant. She withdrew from the recording contract. She stopped performing. She stopped everything. David needed her. He needed care support. Someone to hold his hand through the chemotherapy. Someone to be there during the dark nights when the pain was unbearable. She had worked whatever jobs she could find that offered flexibility. Waitressing, retail, cleaning offices at night so she could be with David during the day. The piano had been packed away. There was no time for music. There was only survival. David had fought for 4 years. 4 years of hope and setbacks, of good days and terrible days, of moments where they almost believed he might beat it. But in the end, the cancer won. Grace had been holding his hand when he died. His last words to her had been, "Promise me you'll play again." She had promised. But it was a promise she couldn't keep. After David's death, Grace discovered the devastating truth. Medical bills, experimental treatments not covered by insurance. She was drowning in debt, and she was pregnant with their daughter, Naomi. The piano had stayed covered. Grace had taken the first steady job she could find that offered health insurance. Custodial work at Ashford Plaza. The pay wasn't much, but it was reliable. It kept a roof over their heads. It put food on the table. It paid for Naomi's education. 17 years had passed. Naomi was now 19, a sophomore at community college studying music education. She had inherited her mother's talent, her father's artistic soul. She knew about Grace's past, about the career that had been left behind. Sometimes Naomi would ask her mother to play just for her. And sometimes late at night, when the world was quiet, Grace would lift the cover from the piano and let her fingers remember. But mostly the piano stayed silent. Mostly Grace stayed invisible. She scrubbed floors at Ashford Plaza. She rode the bus at dawn. She lived a small, quiet life that no one noticed. Until the day Victor Ashford noticed her. Victor Ashford was exactly the kind of man you would expect to own a building like Ashford Plaza. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of confidence that came from never hearing the word no. He wore suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He drove a different luxury car each day of the week. His office on the 50th floor had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city, a view he owned just like he seemed to own everything else. Grace had seen him hundreds of times over the years. He had never once looked at her. Not really. Their eyes had never met. When he walked down a hallway and she was cleaning, he would simply wait for her to move out of his way, never breaking stride, never acknowledging her existence even slightly. That's why Grace was so surprised when Victor Ashford spoke directly to her for the first time. It was a Thursday morning in late September. Grace was cleaning the executive washroom on the 50th floor when Victor emerged from his private office. She immediately moved to the side, making herself smaller, preparing to become invisible again. But instead of walking past her, he stopped. "You," he said, and Grace actually looked behind her to see who he was talking to, before realizing with shock that he was speaking to her. "You're the woman who cleans this floor, correct? Yes, sir," Grace said quietly. "Grace Williams." Grace. Victor seemed to taste the name, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "How long have you worked here, Grace?" 17 years, sir." 17 years. He nodded slowly, as if calculating something. "Tell me, Grace, do you have plans on Saturday, October 14th? The question was so unexpected that Grace could only stare at him. Saturday is my day off, sir." "Perfect." Victor's smile widened. "Ashford Plaza is celebrating its 25th anniversary. I'm hosting a gala. Very exclusive. The city's finest people. I'd like you to attend." Grace felt her heart skip. This had to be some kind of mistake. "Sir, I think there's been a confusion." I know exactly who you are," Victor interrupted. "And I believe everyone who has contributed to Ashford Plaza's success should be acknowledged. You've been here since nearly the beginning. It seems only right that you should be included in the celebration." He paused. "Unless you'd rather not attend." There was something in his tone, something that made Grace uneasy. But what could she say? Her employer was inviting her to a company event. Refusing seemed impossible. "I would be honored, sir." "Thank you. Excellent." Victor reached into his pocket and pulled out a cream-colored envelope with gold lettering. "Your invitation. The gala begins at 7. Formal attire, of course." He handed her the envelope and walked away without another word, leaving Grace standing in the hallway, holding the invitation like it might explode. That evening, Grace sat at her small kitchen table staring at the invitation. It was heavy cardstock embossed with gold, the kind of invitation that probably cost more to print than she spent on groceries in a month. "You are cordially invited to celebrate 25 years of excellence at Ashford Plaza, a gala evening of dining, dancing, and celebration. Formal attire required." Naomi came home from her classes and found her mother still sitting there, the invitation untouched. "Mom." "What's wrong?" Grace showed her the invitation. Naomi's eyes widened. "Mom, this is amazing. Mr. Ashford invited you to the gala." "I don't understand why," Grace said slowly. "He's never even looked at me before. Why now? Why would he want me there? Maybe he's finally recognizing the people who actually keep that building running," Naomi said. But Grace could hear the uncertainty in her daughter's voice too. "Or maybe, I don't know, maybe he's trying to show his employees that he values everyone. Maybe." But Grace didn't believe it. Something about the way Victor had smiled, the way he had emphasized formal attire, made her deeply uncomfortable. She couldn't shake the feeling that this invitation was not a gift, but something else entirely. Over the next 2 weeks, that feeling only grew stronger. Grace noticed things, the way Victor's assistant would glance at her and then quickly look away. The whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room. The sense that people knew something she didn't. But what could she do? The invitation had been extended. Refusing it would seem ungrateful, might even put her job at risk. And beneath her unease, there was something else. A tiny, stubborn spark of something she hadn't felt in years. Defiance. Why shouldn't she go to this gala? Why shouldn't she be acknowledged after 17 years of work? The problem was that Grace had nothing to wear. A gala with the city's finest people required formal attire, and Grace's wardrobe consisted of her work uniforms, a few practical outfits for everyday wear, and one dress she wore to church. Nothing even remotely suitable for a black tie event. She looked at her bank account. After rent, utilities, Naomi's tuition payment, and groceries, there was barely enough left over to survive until the next paycheck. Certainly not enough for a gown. "Mom will figure it out," Naomi insisted. "Come on, let's go to the thrift store on Madison. I've seen some nice stuff there." They spent an entire Saturday afternoon searching through racks of secondhand clothes. Most of the dresses were too worn, too dated, or too small. But finally, in the back corner, Naomi found something. A simple navy blue dress, knee-length, with 3/4 sleeves and a modest neckline. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't designer, but it was clean, it fit, and it was dignified. "It's perfect, Mom," Naomi said, holding it up. "It's classic, elegant, very you." The dress cost $18. Grace bought it along with a pair of simple black flats from the clearance rack. That night, she tried on the outfit in front of her bathroom mirror. She looked like exactly what she was. A working woman doing her best. Not transformed, not Cinderella going to the ball. Just Grace Williams in a thrift store dress. "You look beautiful, Mom," Naomi said from the doorway, and there were tears in her daughter's eyes. "You deserve to be seen." Grace met her daughter's eyes in the mirror. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I don't know why, but I'm scared." "Then don't go," Naomi said immediately. "You don't have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable." But Grace thought about 17 years of being invisible. 17 years of people walking past her like she didn't exist. 17 years of silence. "No," she said quietly. "I'm going. Whatever happens, I'm going." The night before the gala, Grace couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the city outside her window. Car horns, distant sirens, the rumble of the subway beneath the streets. The soundtrack of a life she had lived for so long that she barely heard it anymore. But tonight, she heard everything. Tonight, her mind wouldn't quiet. She found herself thinking about the piano in the living room. How long had it been since she had really played, not the occasional late-night session when Naomi asked, but really played? Lost herself in the music the way she used to. Let her fingers fly across the keys without thinking, without holding back, without remembering all the reasons she had stopped. At 2 a.m, Grace gave up on sleep. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Naomi, and walked into the living room. The piano sat in its corner, patient as always, beneath its protective sheet. Grace pulled the sheet away slowly, revealing the scarred wood, the ivory keys yellowed with age. She sat down on the bench. Her hands found the keys almost automatically, muscle memory stronger than time. She began to play quietly, barely more than a whisper of sound. A simple piece. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. Something beautiful and sad and perfect for the middle of the night when the world was sleeping. The music filled the small apartment. It filled Grace, too, pouring into all the empty places inside her, the hollow spaces she had learned to ignore. Her fingers remembered everything. Every technique her teachers had drilled into her. Every emotion she had learned to channel through the instrument. The piano had been silent for so long, but it hadn't forgotten how to sing. As she played, Grace's mind drifted back. She remembered the first time she had touched a piano. She was 7 years old, visiting her grandmother's house. The upright piano in the living room had seemed magical, mysterious. Her grandmother had shown her middle C, and Grace had been enchanted by the simple fact that pressing one key would always make the same sound. Order in chaos. Beauty in simplicity. She remembered her first recital at age 9, wearing a white dress her mother had sewn, playing Für Elise, while her hands shook so badly she could barely hit the keys. But once she started playing, the fear had vanished. There was only the music. She remembered her audition for Juilliard. She had played Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, one of the most technically demanding pieces in the classical repertoire. She had been terrified she would fail, that she wasn't good enough, that she was reaching for something beyond her grasp. But her fingers had found every note perfectly. The audition panel had accepted her on the spot. She remembered meeting David. The way he had looked at her after her performance at a small venue in Brooklyn, his eyes full of wonder. "You made me cry," he had said. "I didn't even know that was possible. I didn't know music could do that." She remembered playing for him during his final days. Nothing complicated, nothing showy. Just simple melodies that brought him comfort when the pain medication wasn't enough. The piano had been a way to say all the things words couldn't express. "I love you. I'm here. I won't leave you. I'm sorry this is happening. I wish I could make it stop." And she remembered the day she had covered the piano after David's funeral, 8 months pregnant with Naomi, knowing that she couldn't afford to be a pianist anymore. She had to be a mother. She had to survive. The music would have to wait. Except waiting had turned into years. Years had turned into a lifetime. And now here she was at 52 years old, still waiting. Grace finished the nocturne and let the final note fade into silence. Her cheeks were wet. She hadn't even realized she was crying. Mom Grace turned to see Naomi standing in the hallway, wrapped in her bathrobe. "I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean to wake you. You didn't." Naomi came and sat beside her mother on the piano bench. "I haven't heard you play like that in a long time." "I was just remembering," Grace said softly. "Remembering what? Everything." Grace looked down at her hands on the keys. They were worn hands now, calloused from years of scrubbing floors, stained with cleaning chemicals that never quite washed away. Not the hands of a pianist anymore, just the hands of a janitor. Do you ever wonder what your life would be like if things had been different? If your father hadn't gotten sick? If I had kept playing? Naomi was quiet for a moment. Sometimes, she admitted. But then I think if things had been different, maybe I wouldn't exist. Maybe you and Dad would have been so busy with your careers that you never had time for a kid. Maybe I wouldn't have you as my mom." She took Grace's hand. "I know you gave up a lot for Dad, and then for me. I know you sacrificed your dreams. But Mom, you gave me something so much better than a famous mother. You gave me a mother who showed me what real love looks like, what real strength is. That's worth more than any concert hall." Grace pulled her daughter into a hug, holding her tight. "I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow," she whispered. "At this gala. I have a bad feeling about it." "Then we don't have to go," Naomi said again. "No." Grace pulled back, wiping her eyes. "No, I'm going. Whatever Victor Ashford has planned, whatever game he's playing, I'm going to face it. I've been invisible for 17 years. Maybe it's time to be seen." The next morning, the morning of the gala, Grace went through her usual routine, even though it was Saturday. Up at 4. Coffee. Shower. But instead of putting on her uniform, she spent time getting ready in a way she hadn't in years. She washed her hair carefully. Naomi helped her with makeup, teaching her techniques from YouTube videos. Nothing dramatic, just enough to feel put together. At 6 o'clock, Grace put on the navy blue dress from the thrift store, the simple black flats. She looked at herself in the mirror. She didn't look rich. She didn't look glamorous. But she looked dignified. She looked like herself. "You're beautiful, Mom," Naomi said, adjusting the collar of the dress. "And no matter what happens tonight, remember that you have nothing to be ashamed of. You've worked hard your entire life. You've raised me on your own. You've survived things that would have broken other people. You deserve to be at that gala just as much as anyone else." Grace nodded, trying to believe it. She kissed Naomi goodbye and took the bus downtown, the same bus she took every weekday morning. But this time, instead of getting off at the service entrance of Ashford Plaza, she walked around to the front, to the main entrance where she had never been allowed to go. The transformation of Ashford Plaza was staggering. Grace had cleaned this building thousands of times, but she had never seen it like this. The main lobby had been converted into a vision of luxury that seemed almost unreal. Crystal chandeliers blazed with light. The marble floors had been polished to a mirror shine. White-clothed tables surrounded a central dance floor. A string quartet played classical music from a raised platform. Servers in crisp uniforms carried trays of champagne and crystal flutes. And the people. Grace had never seen so much wealth concentrated in one place. Women in gowns that probably cost more than Grace's yearly salary. Diamonds and pearls dripping from ears and throats and wrists. Men in custom tuxedos that fit so perfectly they might have been sewn onto their bodies. Everyone was beautiful in that carefully cultivated way that only unlimited money could achieve. Grace presented her invitation to the attendant at the door. The young woman looked at the invitation, then at Grace, then back at the invitation. Her expression flickered with confusion, but she managed a professional smile. "Welcome to the Ashford Plaza 25th Anniversary Gala. Please enjoy your evening." Grace stepped into the ballroom and immediately felt every eye turn toward her. Not in welcome, but in assessment, measuring, judging, finding her lacking. Her thrift store dress that had seemed dignified in her apartment now felt shabby among the designer gowns. Her simple black flats looked cheap next to the stiletto heels clicking across the marble. Her minimal makeup seemed plain compared to the expertly painted faces around her. Grace heard the whispers start almost immediately. "Who is that? I don't recognize her. That dress is definitely not designer. Do you think she's someone's guest? She looks like… doesn't she look like the cleaning lady?" Grace kept her head up, her spine straight. She found an empty seat at a table near the back of the room and sat down carefully. The other seats at the table were empty. Nobody wanted to sit near her. Victor Ashford stood at the front of the room near the podium, greeting guests with handshakes and smiles. He caught Grace's eye across the room and his smile widened. There was something triumphant in that smile. Something that confirmed all of Grace's fears about why she had really been invited. She watched as Victor leaned over to speak to a woman in a red gown dripping with diamonds. The woman glanced toward Grace, her perfectly shaped eyebrows rising. She said something to the woman next to her. That woman looked too. The whispers spread like ripples across a pond. A server approached Grace's table with champagne. "Would you care for…" He stopped mid-sentence, recognizing her. Grace had cleaned the building where this young man worked catering events. She had emptied his trash, cleaned the service kitchens he used. The recognition in his eyes was followed quickly by confusion. What was she doing here as a guest? "No, thank you," Grace said quietly. The server nodded and moved away quickly, as if her presence made him uncomfortable. Grace sat alone at her table while the gala went on around her. She watched couples dance their movements smooth and practiced. She watched clusters of people laughing, discussing business deals and vacation homes and children at Ivy League schools. She watched servers circulate with food she didn't dare try to eat, afraid she would spill something on her borrowed dignity. And she felt the stares, the judgmental glances, the barely concealed snickers. She had thought being invisible was painful, but this was worse. Being visible, but unwanted. Being seen only to be mocked. At 7:30, Victor Ashford stepped up to the podium. The string quartet fell silent. Conversations hushed. All attention turned to the front of the room. "Good evening, everyone." Victor began, his voice smooth and confident. "Thank you all for joining us tonight to celebrate 25 years of Ashford Plaza. When I founded this company a quarter century ago, I had a vision of excellence, of success, of creating something that would stand as a monument to achievement." The crowd applauded politely. Victor waited for silence before continuing. "Tonight we gather to celebrate that vision becoming reality. But a building, no matter how beautiful, is nothing without the people who fill it. And I don't just mean the executives and entrepreneurs who conduct their business here. I mean everyone. Every single person who contributes to making Ashford Plaza what it is." Grace felt her stomach tighten. She knew what was coming. She could see it in Victor's eyes as they found her across the room. Which is why I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge someone very special who is with us tonight. Victor gestured toward Grace. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Grace Williams." Every head in the room turned. Grace felt her face flush hot. "Grace has worked at Ashford Plaza for 17 years, Victor continued, his voice dripping with false warmth. 17 years of dedicated service. Every morning, Grace is here before the rest of us, making sure our offices are spotless, making sure our trash is emptied, making sure everything is perfect for when we arrive." He paused, letting that sink in. "Grace is a custodian, a janitor, and tonight I wanted her to join us to show my appreciation for the important work she does." The room was absolutely silent. Grace could feel the weight of 200 pairs of eyes on her. Some looked uncomfortable, some looked confused, but most looked amused. They understood what Victor was doing. This wasn't appreciation. This was theater. Performance art using a real person as the punchline. "Grace, would you stand up?" Victor asked. And it wasn't really a question. It was a command. Grace stood slowly, her legs shaking. She clasped her hands in front of her to stop them from trembling. "There she is," Victor said, smiling broadly. "Let's give Grace a round of applause for her years of service." The applause that followed was polite but sparse, condescending. The kind of applause you might give a child who had just recited a poem in front of the class. Grace heard laughter mixed in with the clapping. She saw people whispering behind their hands. Victor wasn't finished. "You know, it's important to remember that success has many levels. While we're up here closing deals and building empires, there are people like Grace who keep the foundation solid. Different roles for different people, but all valuable in their own way." Grace understood the subtext perfectly. Different roles meant lesser roles. Valuable in their own way meant not really valuable at all. This wasn't acknowledgement. This was Victor reinforcing the hierarchy, reminding everyone of their place, and making very clear what Grace's place was. "Please, Grace, sit down," Victor said, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. "Enjoy your evening. After all, how often does someone like you get to experience something like this?" "Someone like you." The words hung in the air like poison. Grace sat down, her face burning. Around her, the whispers grew louder. "I can't believe he actually invited the cleaning lady. What is he trying to prove? This is so awkward. Well, I suppose it's nice that he's being inclusive. Inclusive, please. This is clearly a publicity stunt, or some kind of social experiment. Did you see her dress? Poor thing, probably spent her whole paycheck on it. Grace stared at her hands in her lap. Her calloused, chemical-stained hands. The hands that cleaned these people's offices. The hands they never noticed or thought about. Victor had returned to his speech talking about profits and expansion and future plans. But Grace barely heard him. The humiliation was a physical weight pressing down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. A woman at a nearby table leaned over to her companion. Honestly, I don't understand the point of this. If he wanted to appreciate her, why not just give her a bonus and let her stay home? Why parade her around like some kind of... She paused, searching for the word. Like some kind of curiosity. Because Victor Ashford doesn't do anything without a reason, her companion replied. And I guarantee this is about making himself look good. Look at how generous and egalitarian I am, inviting the help to my fancy party. It's performative nonsense. The woman glanced at Grace, and their eyes met for just a second. The woman had the grace to look embarrassed at being overheard, but she didn't apologize. She simply turned away and resumed her conversation. Grace wondered how much more of this she could endure. The evening had barely begun. How many more hours would she have to sit here on display, while these people dissected her presence like she was some kind of specimen? Victor finished his speech to enthusiastic applause. The string quartet resumed playing. Servers began distributing the first course of what was undoubtedly going to be an elaborate multi-course dinner. A server placed a plate in front of Grace, some kind of seafood arrangement that looked like art. She stared at it, having no idea which fork to use, afraid to touch anything and reveal her ignorance. First time at a formal dinner, a voice said. Grace looked up to see a man in his 60s standing beside her table. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo and a kind smile. The smaller fork is for the appetizer. Work your way from the outside in as the courses progress. Thank you, Grace, said quietly. I'm Jonathan Pierce, the man said, extending his hand. Mind if I join you? My wife is networking and I'm hopeless at that sort of thing. Grace shook his hand, surprised by the courtesy. Grace Williams. I know. Jonathan sat down across from her. That was quite an introduction Victor gave you. Grace didn't know what to say. Was this man mocking her too? His expression seemed genuine, but she had learned tonight that appearances could be deceiving. I'll be honest with you. Grace, Jonathan continued, picking up his fork. I've known Victor Ashford for 15 years, and he doesn't do anything without an ulterior motive. I suspect you were invited here tonight not as an honor, but as a joke. The bluntness of it took Grace's breath away. At least he was honest. Why would he do that? She asked. Because men like Victor measure their worth by their distance from people like you. He needs to look down at someone to feel tall. Jonathan met her eyes. I'm sorry you're experiencing this. It's cruel and it's wrong. If you'd like to leave, I would completely understand. Grace looked around the ballroom. At the glittering crowd, the obscene wealth, the casual cruelty dressed up as sophistication. Every instinct told her to run, to get out while she still had a shred of dignity left. But something else stirred inside her. Something she hadn't felt in 17 years. Anger. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, steady kind that hardened into resolve. No, Grace said quietly. I'm not leaving. Jonathan studied her face and nodded slowly. Then I'll sit with you if you don't mind. Solidarity in the face of nonsense. They ate their appetizers in companionable silence. Jonathan made small talk, asking about Grace's work, her life, her daughter. He listened to her answers with genuine interest, treating her like an actual person instead of an amusing oddity. It was such a stark contrast to the rest of the room that Grace felt tears prick her eyes. The first course ended. The second course arrived. Throughout the meal, Grace was aware of the stares, the whispers, the judgment. But with Jonathan sitting across from her, treating her with respect, it became slightly more bearable. Then, after the main course had been cleared away, Victor Ashford stood up again. "I hope everyone is enjoying their meal," Victor said, his voice carrying across the ballroom. "Before we move on to dessert, I thought we might have a little entertainment." A spotlight suddenly illuminated the far corner of the ballroom, revealing something Grace hadn't noticed before. A grand piano. A Steinway concert grand, its black, lacquered surface gleaming under the light. "As many of you know, I'm a patron of the arts," Victor continued. "And what's a gala without music I've arranged for a special performance?" The crowd murmured appreciation. Grace felt her heart start to pound. Something was wrong. Something was about to happen. But first, Victor said, and his eyes found Grace across the room, "I thought we might have a little fun. Since we're all about inclusion tonight, about recognizing everyone's contributions, I have a question." He paused dramatically. "Grace, do you play piano?" The question fell like a bomb into the silence. Grace's mouth went dry. Every eye in the room turned to her again. Grace's voice came out as barely a whisper. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I used to, a long time ago." "You used to?" Victor's voice was full of delighted surprise that sounded completely fake. "How wonderful, ladies and gentlemen, our very own Janitor used to play piano. Grace, would you do us the honor? Would you play something for us?" It wasn't a request. It was a trap. If she refused, she would look ungrateful, would prove that she didn't belong here. If she agreed, she would make a fool of herself in front of 200 people. Either way, Victor won. The room buzzed with whispered conversations. "Oh my God, he's not serious. This is too much." Even for Victor. "I feel terrible for her. But also this is kind of entertaining. She's going to embarrass herself so badly." Grace felt frozen. Her mind raced. It had been so long since she had really played in public, years and years. Could she even remember? What if her fingers failed her? What if she proved Victor right, that she was just a janitor who should have stayed invisible? "Grace?" Victor prompted, his smile sharp as a knife. "Don't be shy. I'm sure whatever you play will be charming." Charming. The word was an insult wrapped in false encouragement. Jonathan leaned across the table. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "You can stand up and walk out right now. These people aren't worth your time." But Grace was thinking about something her piano teacher had told her decades ago. When you perform, you're not playing for the audience. You're not playing for the critics. You're playing for the music itself. Let it speak through you. Nothing else matters. Grace stood up. Her legs felt weak, but she forced them to be steady. She walked toward the piano, aware of every whisper, every stare, every judgment following her across the marble floor. The piano was magnificent. A Steinway Model D, 9 feet of precision engineering and artistic beauty. The same kind of piano she had played at Carnegie Hall a lifetime ago. Grace reached out and touched the smooth surface, feeling the cool lacquer under her fingertips. Behind her, she heard Victor's voice, full of cruel amusement. "Take your time, Grace. We're all very curious to hear what the help can do." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not kind laughter. Anticipatory laughter. They were waiting for the spectacle. The poor janitor about to humiliate herself. Grace pulled out the piano bench and sat down. She adjusted the height muscle memory guiding her, even after all these years. She looked at the keys, at the familiar pattern of black and white, the same pattern she had known since she was 7 years old. Her hands were shaking. She placed them on the keys, and they trembled against the ivory. Nervous Grace, Victor called out. More laughter. Grace closed her eyes. She thought about David holding her hand on his deathbed. Promise me you'll play again. She thought about Naomi saying, you deserve to be seen. She thought about 17 years of being invisible, of scrubbing floors while life happened around her, of letting her dreams stay buried under a sheet in the corner of a room. And she thought about the music. Always the music. The one thing in her life that had never betrayed her, never left her, never stopped, waiting. Grace took a deep breath. When she opened her eyes, her hands had stopped shaking. She began to play. The opening notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor filled the ballroom. The effect was instantaneous. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. People who had been moving toward the bar froze in place, because these weren't the tentative notes of someone who used to play piano a long time ago. These were the notes of a virtuoso. Perfect. Precise. Powerful. Grace's fingers moved across the keys with the confidence of decades of training. The opening theme emerged lyrical and haunting, each note crystalline in its clarity. This was one of the most technically demanding pieces in the classical piano repertoire, a piece that professional concert pianists spent months perfecting, and Grace was playing it flawlessly. Victor Ashford's smile had frozen on his face. His expression was shifting from smug amusement to confusion to something that looked like shock. The music built in complexity. Grace's hands flew across the keys, executing runs and arpeggios that required years of practice and natural talent. Her left hand maintained the steady bass line, while her right hand danced through the melodic phrases. The piano sang under her fingers, each note ringing out clear and true. Jonathan Pierce sat forward in his seat, his eyes wide. He recognized the piece. He recognized the skill. Around the room, people were beginning to realize that something extraordinary was happening. The ballad moved into its second theme, more agitated, more passionate. Grace leaned into the music, her body swaying with the rhythm, her fingers attacking the keys with controlled intensity. This section required not just technical skill, but emotional depth, the ability to convey the turbulent feelings Chopin had poured into the composition. Grace poured her own feelings into it. 17 years of invisibility, the loss of her husband, the dreams she had buried, the quiet dignity she had maintained while being treated as less than human. All of it flowed through her fingers into the music. A woman in the front row gasped audibly. She recognized the piece, understood the level of difficulty. She turned to her husband with shock in her eyes. He was equally stunned, leaning forward as if drawn by the music. The whispers started again, but different now. Oh my God, she's incredible. Who is she? Victor said she's a janitor. That can't be right. Nobody plays like that without serious training. Is this some kind of joke? Did Victor hire a professional pianist and pretend she's the cleaning lady? But it wasn't a joke. It was real. Grace Williams' custodian, 52 years old, hands stained with cleaning chemicals, was playing Chopin's Ballad No. 1 like she had been born to do it. The music swelled into the third theme, the most technically challenging section. Grace's hands moved so fast they were almost a blur. Octave runs in both hands requiring perfect coordination and tremendous finger strength, cross rhythms that needed absolute precision. Dynamic contrasts from whisper soft to thunderously loud. She played it all perfectly, people had stopped pretending to do anything else. Every single person in the ballroom was staring at the piano, at the woman they had been mocking moments before, unable to believe what they were hearing. Grace was crying. She hadn't meant to, but tears were streaming down her face as she played. Because this was her. This was who she had been before life had stripped everything away. This was the part of herself she had buried and mourned and tried to forget. But it had never truly gone away. It had been waiting. All these years waiting for this moment. The ballad reached its central climax, the section where Chopin's genius truly shone. The music became a conversation between tragedy and hope, between despair and resilience. Grace let it pour through her, every emotion she had ever felt channeled into the keys. She thought about meeting David in Washington Square Park. She thought about their wedding, a small ceremony with just a few friends so full of joy they had both cried. She thought about watching him paint the concentration on his face, the way he would step back from his canvas and smile when he got something exactly right. She thought about the day he got his diagnosis. Sitting in the doctor's office, hands clasped together, listening to words that destroyed their future. Stage 4. Inoperable. Terminal. She thought about the decision she had made instantly without hesitation. Her career didn't matter. The recording contract didn't matter. Nothing mattered except being with him. She thought about 4 years of caring for him. The good days when he could still laugh, still paint a little, still be himself. The bad days when the pain was so terrible that all she could do was hold his hand and try not to let him see her crying. The final days when he drifted in and out of consciousness, when she played simple melodies for him because music was the only thing that seemed to reach him. She thought about standing at his graveside, 8 months pregnant, wondering how she was going to survive. She thought about Naomi being born this tiny, perfect human who looked just like David. She thought about working 2 jobs while pregnant, 3 jobs after Naomi was born, doing whatever it took to keep them alive. She thought about the piano being packed away, the dreams being folded up and stored, the gradual acceptance that her old life was over and a new, smaller, harder life had begun. She thought about 17 years of cleaning Ashford Plaza, 17 years of being invisible, 17 years of people like Victor Ashford walking past her like she was furniture, like she didn't have a history or a story or a soul. All of it flowed into the music. Every note was a memory. Every phrase was a feeling she had never been allowed to express. The ballroom was absolutely silent except for the piano. 200 people sat transfixed. This was not entertainment. This was not performance. This was a human being's soul laid bare, translated into sound. Jonathan Pierce had tears on his face. So did several other people scattered throughout the crowd. Victor Ashford stood near the podium looking like he had been struck. The cruel smile was completely gone. His face had gone pale. He looked like a man watching his carefully constructed plan explode in front of him. Grace didn't notice. She was lost in the music now, in the place where nothing else existed. Her fingers knew what to do without conscious thought. This was the piece she had played at Carnegie Hall 29 years ago. This was the piece that had made critics write words like transcendent and extraordinary and once-in-a-generation talent. She was that person again. For these few minutes in this marble ballroom, in front of people who had mocked her, she was not a janitor. She was not invisible. She was Grace Williams' pianist, one of the finest her generation had produced. The music built toward its final climax. The technical demands became almost impossible. Massive chords in both hands, sweeping runs across the entire keyboard, complex polyphonic lines that required each finger to be independent. Grace played it all with complete mastery, her years of training burning through the rust of disuse. The emotion built with the technical complexity. Chopin had written this ballade as a narrative, a story told in music. The story of struggle and triumph, of despair and hope, of loss and redemption. Grace poured her own story into it, letting the music speak everything she had never been able to say. The final section approached. Grace's hands were moving with such speed and power that the piano seemed to thunder. But underneath the thunder was always the melody, the beautiful, heartbreaking melody that tied everything together. She thought about Naomi, about her daughter following in her footsteps, studying music, keeping the dream alive. She thought about late nights when Naomi would ask her to play just for her, just the two of them in their small apartment. She thought about the way music had survived in their family, even when everything else had been taken away. The music reached its final phrase. A series of descending chords, powerful and definitive. Grace played them with every ounce of strength she had left. Each chord rang out across the ballroom, filling the space, filling the silence, filling the hollow places in every person listening. The final chord. Grace let it ring, her hands holding the keys, letting the sound sustain as long as the piano would allow. The note hung in the air, gradually fading until it was gone, and there was only silence. Complete, absolute silence. Grace lifted her hands from the keys. She stared at them, at her worn, calloused hands that had just created something beautiful. Tears dripped from her chin onto the ivory keys. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15. And then someone stood up. It was Jonathan Pierce. He rose from his seat and began to clap. Not polite applause, real applause, the kind that comes from genuine emotion. Within seconds, the entire ballroom erupted. Everyone stood. The sound of applause was like thunder crashing over Grace in waves. People were clapping so hard their hands must have hurt. Some were crying openly. Others stood with their mouths open, still processing what they had just witnessed. Grace stood slowly unsteady on her feet. She turned to face the crowd, and the applause grew even louder. This was not the condescending golf clap they had given her earlier. This was genuine appreciation, genuine awe. These people had just witnessed something extraordinary, and they knew it. Victor Ashford stood frozen near the podium. His face was bright red. The humiliation he had planned for Grace had backfired spectacularly. He had been exposed as the cruel, small man he was. Someone who would mock a woman without knowing anything about her. Someone who measured his worth by stepping on others. Jonathan Pierce pushed through the crowd toward the piano. He reached Grace and took her hands in his. "My God," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "My God, who are you?" "I'm Grace Williams," she said simply. "No, I mean, where did you train? Where have you performed? How is it possible that you're working as a custodian?" Grace looked at this kind stranger who had sat with her during her humiliation, who had stood first to applaud her triumph. "I studied at Juilliard," she said quietly. "I performed at Carnegie Hall when I was 23. And then my husband got sick and I had to make a choice." Jonathan's eyes widened with recognition. "Grace Williams. Oh my God, I saw you perform. 29 years ago. I was at Carnegie Hall. You played the same piece." He shook his head in wonder. "I've been to thousands of concerts in my life. I'm on the board of the Symphony Foundation. That performance is still one of the finest I've ever witnessed. And tonight was even better." "That's impossible," Grace said. I haven't really played in years. I'm out of practice. My technique must be— Your technique is flawless, Jonathan interrupted. But that's not what made this remarkable. It's the emotion. The depth. 29 years ago, you played with extraordinary talent. Tonight, you played with a lifetime of experience, with pain and loss and survival. You didn't just play the notes. You lived them. Around them, people were pressing closer, wanting to congratulate Grace, wanting to know who she was. The woman who had whispered about Grace's dress earlier pushed through the crowd, her face flushed with embarrassment. I owe you an apology, she said to Grace. I said terrible things. I judged you without knowing anything about you. I'm so sorry. Grace nodded, accepting the apology with the same quiet dignity she had shown all evening. More people approached. A young woman who taught at a music academy, an elderly couple who had been attending classical concerts for 50 years, a journalist who wanted to write an article about Grace's story. Everyone wanted a piece of her, wanted to be close to the remarkable thing that had just happened. But Grace's eyes had found Victor Ashford. He stood alone now, abandoned by the crowd that had surrounded him earlier. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. He caught Grace's gaze, and his jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he might apologize, might acknowledge what he had done. Instead, he turned and walked toward his private elevator, his shoulders rigid with barely contained humiliation. He didn't say goodbye to his guests, didn't acknowledge the party he had thrown to celebrate himself. He simply left. Jonathan noticed the exchange. That man got exactly what he deserved, he said quietly. He thought he could humiliate you. Instead, he gave you a stage to prove how wrong he was about everything. I didn't do this to prove anything to him, Grace said. I did it for me, to remember who I used to be, to remember that she's still here even after everything. She's absolutely still here. Jonathan agreed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. I meant what I said about the Symphony Foundation. We host events throughout the year. Benefits, galas, educational programs. We're always looking for talented performers. Would you consider playing for us? We can pay, of course, and we can provide exposure that might lead to other opportunities. Grace took the card, staring at it. Her hands were trembling again, but this time from possibility rather than fear. I have a job, she said. I have responsibilities. My daughter. Your daughter is a music student, Jonathan said gently. What better gift could you give her than showing her that dreams don't have to stay buried forever? That it's never too late to reclaim parts of yourself you thought were lost. Grace thought about Naomi at home, probably watching television, having no idea what had just happened. She thought about going home to their small apartment, back to her regular life, back to being invisible. Or she could take this card. She could make a phone call. She could start playing again, not as her only career, but as part of her life. She could be both. A mother, a working woman, and a pianist. I'll think about it, Grace said, tucking the card into her purse. Please do, Jonathan said. The world needs to hear you play, not just tonight, but many nights. You have a gift, Grace. Don't let it stay hidden. Grace left the gala an hour later, after accepting more congratulations, more apologies from people who had judged her. After giving her contact information to Jonathan and several other people who wanted to help her revive her musical career. After standing in the lobby of Ashford Plaza and realizing that she would never be invisible in this building again. The bus ride home felt surreal. Grace sat in her usual seat, still wearing her thrift store dress, but everything had changed. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications. Someone had recorded her performance and posted it online. It was already spreading, being shared thousands of times. Janitor shocks. Gala with stunning piano performance. Viral video custodian's secret talent revealed. From invisible to unforgettable, one woman's triumph. Grace turned off her phone. She didn't want to be viral. She didn't want to be a feel-good story for strangers to share. She wanted to go home to her daughter. Naomi was waiting when Grace walked through the apartment door. She jumped up from the couch, her eyes wide. Mom, you're everywhere. Someone posted a video and it's... She stopped, really looking at her mother. Mom, are you okay? Grace started crying. Not sad tears, not happy tears, just tears releasing all the emotion of the evening. Naomi rushed over and wrapped her arms around her mother, holding her tight. I played, baby Grace whispered. I really played. For the first time in 17 years, I played in front of people, and I remembered. I remembered who I used to be. I knew you would. Naomi said, her own voice thick with tears. I knew you were still there. They stood in the small living room, holding each other while the piano in the corner waited patiently, like it had always waited. Mom, people are calling you a hero, Naomi said. They're saying you're an inspiration. I'm not a hero, Grace said, pulling back to look at her daughter. I'm just a woman who played piano at a party. Tomorrow, I'll still be a custodian. I'll still ride the bus at 5 in the morning. I'll still scrub floors. Will you, though? Naomi asked. That man from the Symphony Foundation, he offered you opportunities. You could perform again. Really perform. Maybe Grace said. Or maybe I'll just play for myself sometimes. For you. In this apartment where it matters most. She touched her daughter's cheek. I don't need to be famous, Naomi. I just needed to remember that the music is still part of me. That Victor Ashford and people like him don't get to define my worth. The next Monday, Grace returned to work at Ashford Plaza. She put on her faded uniform, took the early bus, entered through the service entrance. But everything was different. People she had worked with for years, people who had barely noticed her before, stopped to congratulate her. Security guards who had never made eye contact before shook her hand. Administrative assistants who had looked right through her asked for her autograph. Victor Ashford had sent an email to all staff, a formal apology for his misguided attempt at humor at the gala, an acknowledgement that he had failed to recognize the remarkable talents within his own organization. It was damage control, not genuine remorse, but it was something. Grace didn't need his apology. She went to work. She cleaned offices and emptied trash and made Ashford Plaza spotless, just like she had for 17 years. But now when she worked, she hummed. Pieces by Chopin and Rachmaninoff and Liszt. The music that had been locked away for so long was part of her daily life again. And in the evenings after Naomi came home from classes, Grace would sit at the piano and play. Sometimes just for a few minutes, sometimes for hours, making up for lost time, reconnecting with the part of herself that she had thought was gone forever. 6 months after the gala, Grace performed her first official concert with the Symphony Foundation. It was a benefit for music education in underprivileged schools. Naomi sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Jonathan Pierce introduced Grace, telling her story about talent hidden and rediscovered about resilience and dignity. Grace played Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor, the same piece she had played at the gala. But this time, it was on her own terms. Not as a spectacle or a joke, but as an artist sharing her gift. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Grace still works at Ashford Plaza. She still takes the early bus, still scrubs floors, still does the job she has done for 17 years. But now she also plays piano. At benefits and small concerts and community events. Not as her full-time career, but as part of who she is. Because Grace Williams learned something important that night at the gala. She learned that you don't have to choose between surviving and living. You don't have to bury the parts of yourself that make you whole just because life gets hard. You don't have to stay invisible just because other people refuse to see you. Sometimes all it takes is one moment, one choice to sit down at a piano in front of people who doubt you, one decision to let your light shine even when others want to keep you in the dark. Grace Williams was invisible for 17 years, but she was never truly gone. The music waited. The talent waited. The soul of the artist waited beneath the uniform of the custodian, ready to emerge when the moment was right. And when that moment came, when Grace placed her hands on those keys and began to play, she proved something that everyone needs to remember. You are not defined by your job. You are not defined by your circumstances. You are not defined by how other people see you or fail to see you. You are defined by the gifts you carry inside, the dreams you refuse to completely abandon, the strength you show in surviving, and the courage you find to let yourself be seen when the time is right. Grace Williams touched the piano keys that night, and in doing so, she touched something infinitely more important. She touched her own truth, her own worth, her own undeniable light. And no one, not Victor Ashford or anyone else, could ever make her invisible again.